They mistook my silence for submission, thinking the $1 gift card they tossed at my son was a hilarious joke. They call their niece a princess while treating my boy like trash. Oblivious that I control their ledgers. They don't realize I am the tsunami coming for their sandcastle. So pour a stiff drink. You are about to watch a single mother use their own arrogance to buy their entire legacy out from under them. My name is Kendall Brookstone, and as I tightened my grip on the steering wheel of my 10-year-old sedan, I reminded myself that I was doing this for Leo. Just for Leo. The iron gates of the Sterling estate loomed ahead, towering and pretentious, wrought into intricate vines that looked more like thorny barriers than welcoming arms. My father and his wife, Victoria, lived in a world where security gates were less about safety and more about delineation. Inside was the realm of the chosen, the wealthy, the Sterlings. Outside was everyone else. For the last 10 years, ever since I walked away from a merger disguised as a marriage, I had been relegated to the outside. I checked the rearview mirror. Leo, my 7-year-old son, was busy trying to flatten the cowlick in his hair. He was wearing his best button-down shirt, the one I had found at a consignment shop 3 weeks ago. It was a little tight across the shoulders, a testament to how fast he was growing, but he looked polished. He looked hopeful. That hope terrified me. He did not know these people, not really. To him, they were just grandparents he rarely saw, mythical figures who lived in a castle. To me, they were sharks in cashmere. We drove up the long, winding driveway, flanked by manicured hedges that looked unnatural in their perfection. The house itself, a sprawling neoclassical mansion that my father liked to call the crown jewel, sat on a hill overlooking the city. It was the physical embodiment of the Sterling Heights Hotel brand, imposing, expensive, and utterly devoid of warmth. There were 6 other cars in the driveway, all of them German or Italian imports, gleaming under the winter sun. My Honda, with its fading paint and the rhythmic rattle in the exhaust pipe, looked like a dirty smudge on a pristine white canvas. I parked as far away from the front entrance as possible, to spare the valet the embarrassment of having to touch my door handle. Leo hopped out, clutching a small, simply wrapped box. It was a handmade ornament he had painted for his grandfather. "Do you think Grandpa will like it?" he asked, his eyes wide and bright. "He will love it, Leo," I lied. My voice was steady, a skill I had perfected over a decade of navigating corporate war zones and single motherhood. "Just remember what we talked about. Best manners. Say please and thank you, and stick close to me." We walked to the massive double doors. Before I could even knock, they swung open. A hired server, not a family member, nodded at us stiffly. The air inside hit me instantly, a wall of heat scented with expensive cinnamon candles and the cloying perfume Victoria favored. It was the smell of money. It smelled like judgment. The foyer was crowded. My father's business associates, people who measured human worth by credit scores and stock portfolios, stood in clusters, holding crystal flutes of champagne. I recognized a few faces, ghosts from my former life. They glanced at me, their eyes flickering over my off-brand dress and practical heels. Before darting away, I was the cautionary tale. I was the sterling daughter who had thrown away a fortune because she wanted to marry for love and build a career on her own terms. Victoria spotted us from the grand staircase. She was 60 but looked a stretched and preserved 40, thanks to a surgeon in Brazil she visited annually. She wore a red velvet gown that cost more than my car, and diamonds dripped from her earlobes like frozen tears. "Kendall," she said, descending the stairs with a smile that did not reach her eyes. It was a smile that bared teeth rather than warmth. "You actually came, and you brought the child." "His name is Leo." "Victoria," I said, keeping my voice level. I felt Leo shrink slightly against my leg. I placed a protective hand on his shoulder. "Right, Leo," she said, waving a hand dismissively as if swatting away a gnat. "Well, try not to let him touch the silk drapes. We just had them imported from Italy. The kitchen staff has set up a table for the children in the sunroom. But since the other children have nannies, perhaps you should just keep him with you. We wouldn't want any accidents." She turned her back on us before I could respond. Drifting away to greet a man who owned a chain of car dealerships, I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. This was exactly why I had stayed away. But my father had called last week, his voice sounding older, frailer, asking to see his grandson. For a moment, I had let myself believe that blood might actually be thicker than liquid assets. We moved into the great room, where a 20-foot Christmas tree stood, groaning under the weight of gold and silver ornaments. Underneath it lay a mountain of gifts, wrapped in foil paper that shimmered under the chandelier light. "Kendall?" The voice was high-pitched and grating. I turned to see Tiffany, my half-sister, posing near the fireplace. If Victoria was the queen of this ice palace, Tiffany was the princess regent. She was 30 years old, but dressed like a teenager with an unlimited credit limit. She wore a white fur stole over a glittering silver dress, and she held a glass of wine in one hand and her phone in the other, likely live-streaming her existence to her 50,000 followers. Standing next to her was Bella, her 8-year-old daughter. Bella was dressed in a miniature version of Tiffany's outfit, complete with a tiny fur cape. She looked less like a child and more like a doll that had been taken out of the box just for display. "Hello, Tiffany," I said. "Merry Christmas." Tiffany looked me up and down, her lip curling slightly. "Oh, wow, you're wearing that? Brave. I guess vintage is in style if you squint hard enough," she laughed. A brittle sound. "And this must be the little cousin. Hi there, buddy." Leo stepped forward, holding out his hand politely. "Hi, Aunt Tiffany. I'm Leo." Tiffany didn't shake his hand. She just took a sip of her wine and looked at Bella. "Bella, look, it's your cousin. Say hi, but don't get too close. Honey, you don't want to get anything on your dress before photo time." Bella looked at Leo with the blank, entitled stare of a child who has never been told no. "Mom? He looks poor," she whispered, loud enough for half the room to hear. Tiffany giggled. "Bella, you can't just say things like that, even if they are true. It's rude." My blood temperature rose, but I kept my face impassive. I was a consulting ghost in my professional life. I walked into failing companies, analyzed their rot, and fixed them or dismantled them without leaving a fingerprint. I knew how to observe without reacting. I knew that reacting gave the enemy power. And right now, in this house, these people were not family. They were hostiles. "Let's go see Grandpa," I whispered to Leo, guiding him away from the toxicity radiating from my sister. We found my father sitting in a high-backed leather chair near the window. He looked tired. The Sterling Heights empire was his creation. But lately, rumors in the financial sector suggested the foundation was cracking. He smiled when he saw Leo, a genuine, albeit weak, expression. "He looks like you." "Kendall," my father said softly, taking the ornament Leo offered. "Thank you, son." For an hour, we endured the cocktail chatter. I sipped sparkling water and deflected passive-aggressive questions about my job. I told them I worked in data analysis, which was true, but boring enough to make their eyes glaze over. They assumed I was a low-level clerk. They had no idea that my billable hourly rate was higher than what most of them made in a week. They assumed my silence was submission. They assumed my lack of designer labels meant a lack of power. Then, it was time for the main event, the gift opening. Victoria clapped her hands, silencing the room. "Everyone, gather round. It is time for our little angel to open her presents." She meant Bella. Of course, Leo was just a spectator. We sat on the periphery of the circle. Tiffany sat in the center with Bella, arranging her dress so it would look perfect for the photos. Victoria stood over them like a benevolent monarch distributing largesse to the peasantry. "This one is from Grandma and Grandpa," Victoria announced. Handing Bella a box the size of a suitcase, Bella tore into the paper. Inside was a leather handbag. I recognized the Double G logo immediately. It was a Gucci tote, from their latest children's line. It retailed for roughly $1,200. "I love it," Bella shrieked. draping it over her arm. Matches my shoes. And this, Tiffany said, handing her daughter a glossy envelope. This is from Mommy and Daddy. Bella ripped it open. Disney World, the VIP tour. We are going for 2 weeks, Tiffany announced to the room, beaming. First class, private guides, the works. A princess deserves to visit her castle, right? The room applauded. I felt Leo shift beside me. He didn't care about the purse, but his eyes widened at the mention of Disney. I squeezed his hand. And finally, my father said, his voice a bit hesitant as he handed Bella a thick red envelope. For your savings, sweetheart. Bella opened it and pulled out a stack of bills. New, crisp $100 bills. She fanned them out. It looked like $5,000. $5,000, Tiffany squealed. Oh, Daddy, you spoil her. Put that in your college fund, baby. Or, buy that pony you wanted. Laughter rippled through the room. The excess was nauseating. It wasn't just about the money. It was the performance of it. It was a display of dominance. Then, the room went quiet. The pile of gifts was gone. All eyes turned to Leo. He was sitting with his hands in his lap, trying very hard to look invisible. He didn't expect anything. I had told him that the visit was the gift, but in the face of such overwhelming gluttony, the exclusion felt violent. Victoria seemed to suddenly remember he was there. Oh, right, we didn't forget the other one. She reached behind the tree and pulled out a single, thin white envelope. It was unsealed. She didn't hand it to Leo. She tossed it. The envelope fluttered through the air and landed on the rug near Leo's foot. Go on, open it, Victoria said, taking a sip of her champagne. Don't be shy. Leo looked at me. I nodded. My jaw set so hard my teeth ached. He picked up the envelope and opened it. He pulled out a plastic card. It was bright yellow with red lettering, a gift card. Leo squinted at it. It's for the dollar store? A few guests chuckled nervously. Turn it over, kid, Tiffany said, smirking. Check the balance written on the back. Leo turned it over. In black Sharpie, someone had scrawled, $1. I felt the air leave the room. It was so quiet. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. $1. They had given my son a gift card for $1. I leaned in closer, my eyesight sharp. I saw the small print on the back of the card. Valid through December 2023. It was expired. It was an expired gift card for $1. It wasn't a gift. It was an insult wrapped in paper. It was a declaration that my son was worth less than the lint in their pockets. I looked up at Victoria. She was smiling. I looked at my father. He was studying the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. He had allowed this. Tiffany let out a loud, bubbling laugh that shattered the silence. She leaned forward, resting her hand on Bella's shoulder. Don't be sad, Kendall, Tiffany said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. Bella is a princess, so naturally, her standards are different. We have to maintain the brand image, But for your kid, honestly, $1 probably more than his actual value anyway. The room did not gasp. They did not protest. A few of them smirked. They were waiting for me to cry. They were waiting for the poor, single mother to break down, to beg, to scream, to make a scene that they could gossip about over brunch for the next 6 months. They wanted me to be the hysterical failure to contrast with their composed success, but they didn't know who I was. They didn't know I spent my days dissecting the failures of arrogant men just like them. They didn't know that my silence wasn't weakness. It was data collection. I did not cry. I did not yell. I stood up slowly. The movement was smooth, controlled. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I unlocked it and opened the camera app. I switched to video mode. What are you doing? Victoria snapped, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. I didn't answer. I pointed the lens at Leo. Leo, honey, I said, my voice clear and loud enough to carry to the back of the room. Hold up your gift, please. Leo, confused but obedient, held up the yellow card. I panned the camera. I captured the card in his small hand. Then, in a smooth, continuous shot, I panned to the right. I captured Bella sitting amidst a fortress of Gucci boxes, the VIP Disney tickets, and the fan of $5,000 in cash scattered on the floor. The contrast was stark. It was brutal. It was perfect. I panned up to Tiffany's face. She looked annoyed, posing instinctively as the camera hit her, but her eyes held a flicker of confusion. I panned to Victoria, who looked indignant. I panned to the opulent tree, the marble fireplace, the champagne glasses. I lowered the phone but kept recording. I looked directly at Tiffany, then at Victoria. "Thank you," I said. My voice was calm, almost cheerful. "Thank you for this valuable lesson." "Put that phone away," my father said. Finally speaking up, his voice was trembling. "Kendall, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic, Dad," I said. "I'm being appreciative. You've shown my son exactly where he stands in this family. And you've shown me exactly what I need to do next." I reached down and took the expired card from Leo's hand. I tucked it into my pocket as if it were a black card with an unlimited limit. "Come on, Leo," I said, extending my hand to him. "We're leaving." "But I didn't get to say thank you," Leo whispered, looking at his grandfather. "You don't have to," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We don't thank people for garbage." I turned my back on them. I heard Tiffany scoff. "She's crazy," Tiffany muttered to the room. "Total loser energy. She'll be back when she needs rent money." I walked toward the door, my heels clicking rhythmically on the marble. Every step took me further away from their approval and closer to my own resolve. They thought they had humiliated me. They thought they had put the poor relation in her place. They had no idea that they had just handed me the weapon I would use to destroy them. The card in my pocket was worth only $1, but the footage on my phone? That was going to be priceless. As I pushed open the heavy front doors and stepped out into the cold, crisp winter air, I didn't feel the chill. I felt a fire igniting in my chest. It was burning hot and bright. "Mom?" Leo asked as we walked to our battered car. "Why did they give me that? Did I do something wrong?" I opened the car door for him and buckled him in. I looked at his innocent face, his eyes welling with tears he was trying to hold back. "No, baby," I said, brushing the hair from his forehead. "You didn't do anything wrong. They made a mistake, a very big, very expensive mistake." I walked to the driver's side, got in, and started the engine as I drove down the winding driveway. Past the manicured hedges and the iron gates, I didn't look back at the house. I was already calculating the next move. The princess was living in a sandcastle, and the tide was coming in. The silence inside my Honda Civic was heavier than the humid air of the Sterling mansion had been. The only sound was the rhythmic thumping of a loose strut near the rear tire and the soft, ragged breathing of my son in the passenger seat. The heater was struggling to combat the December chill, pushing out lukewarm air that smelled faintly of burning dust. I kept my eyes fixed on the highway, the yellow lines blurring into a continuous stream of caution. I was trying to drive, but my mind was still back in that room, replaying the moment the plastic card hit the Persian rug. The sound it made, a pathetic, hollow clack, echoed in my ears louder than the engine. "Mom?" Leo's voice was small, barely audible over the road noise. I glanced over. He was clutching the expired gift card in his lap, turning it over and over with his thumb. "Yes, baby?" I asked, forcing my voice to be gentle, stripping away the razor-sharp edge of the rage I was currently nursing. "Why does Grandma Victoria hate me?" The question was not an arrow. It was a shotgun blast to the chest. It was direct, messy, and impossible to heal from quickly. I gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather cover creaked. I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell him that she didn't hate him, that she was just stressed or busy or misunderstood. That is what good mothers are supposed to do, shield their children from the ugly truths of adult dysfunction. But I looked at his face, illuminated by the passing streetlights. He was 7, but his eyes were ancient. He knew. He had seen the way she looked at Bella, as if Bella were a rare orchid, and then looked at him as if he were a weed growing through the pavement. "She doesn't hate you, Leo," I said, choosing my words with the precision of a surgeon. "She just doesn't know how to love anything that doesn't have a price tag attached to it. That is her problem, not yours, never yours." He nodded slowly, accepting the answer even if he didn't fully understand it. He leaned his head against the cold window and closed his eyes. As he drifted off to sleep, my mind traveled back 10 years. I had not always been the outcast. Once, I was the golden child. I was the one who graduated summa cum laude from Wharton. I was the one my father took to board meetings, the one he groomed to take over the empire. Tiffany was the pretty distraction. I was the heir. But the sterling legacy came with conditions. The final condition was a merger disguised as a marriage. My father wanted to unite our hotel chain with a shipping conglomerate owned by the drowsy, arrogant son of his golfing buddy. It was a business transaction, pure and simple. I was the asset being traded to secure a new line of credit. When I refused, when I told them I was pregnant with the child of a man I actually loved, a man who had no trust fund, no pedigree, just kindness and a brilliant mind, the gates slammed shut. My partner died in a car accident 4 months before Leo was born, leaving me alone in a world that requires 2 incomes to survive. My father offered to take me back, provided I gave Leo up for adoption and married the shipping heir. I chose the Honda Civic and the 1-bedroom apartment. I chose dignity, and for that, they branded me a failure. They rewrote history to make me the black sheep, the cautionary tale of what happens when a woman thinks she is smarter than her father. We arrived at our apartment complex. It was a clean, safe building, but it lacked a doorman or marble floors. I carried a sleeping Leo up the 2 flights of stairs, his weight a comforting burden. I tucked him into his bed, pulling the duvet up to his chin. I kissed his forehead, lingering for a moment to smell the scent of his shampoo, grounding myself in the only reality that mattered. Then, I walked into the living room and shed the skin of the struggling single mother. I sat down at my desk, a sleek black workspace that looked out of place in the modest room. I opened my laptop. It was not a consumer-grade machine. It was a custom-built fortress of processing power, encrypted with military-grade security protocols. I placed my thumb on the scanner. The screen flared to life, to the Sterlings. I was Kendall, the administrative assistant who probably filed papers for a dental office. They never asked for details, and I never volunteered them. They assumed that because I bought clothes at Target, I must be earning minimum wage. The truth was far more lucrative. I logged into the secure server of Obsidian Analytics. I was not an assistant. I was a senior forensic auditor and crisis management consultant. In the industry, we were called consulting ghosts. Corporations hired us when they were bleeding money and didn't know why, or when they needed to find a body buried in the financial statements before the IRS did. I was the person they called when they needed to clean up a mess or, more often, when they needed to find the leverage to destroy a competitor. I lived in the shadows of the financial world, turning data into weapons. My hourly rate was $1,200. I didn't spend it on Gucci bags or leased Porsches. I put it into diversified trust funds for Leo, real estate investments in developing markets, and a war chest I had been building for a rainy day. Tonight, it was pouring. A notification pinged on my screen. It was a secure video link request from the director of Obsidian, a man known only as Silas. It was late, but in our line of work, time zones were irrelevant. I accepted the call. Silas's face appeared, sharp and gray-scaled in the low light of his office in London. "Brookstone," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "I assume you are not celebrating the holiday with eggnog." "Family drama," I said, my voice flat. "The usual." "Well, this might cheer you up, or ruin your night. I haven't decided yet." He tapped a key on his end. "The partners met this morning. Your work on the radical restructuring of the Pacific Rim Logistics merger was surgical. Brutal, but surgical. You are being promoted to partner, effective immediately. I didn't smile. Thank you. Silas, does this come with a corner office I will never use? It comes with a significant equity stake and full autonomy on case selection. Which brings me to the second item. He looked down at a file on his desk. We acquired a portfolio of distressed debt from a failing regional bank in Chicago this afternoon. High risk, high yield junk bonds. Most of it is garbage we will write off for tax purposes. But there is one asset in the bundle that I flagged. I think you should handle it personally. Why me? Because the debtor's last name is the same as yours. My heart hammered against my ribs. A slow, heavy thud. Send it. A file appeared in my encrypted Dropbox. The file name was simply Project Glasshouse. I opened it. The screen filled with spreadsheets, balance sheets, and loan amortization schedules. I began to read, my eyes scanning the numbers with the speed of a machine. The more I read, the colder my blood became. Sterling Heights was not a castle. It was a hollow shell painted gold. My father and Victoria had been living on borrowed time for 5 years. The hotel chain had not turned a profit since 2018. To maintain their lifestyle, the parties, the cars, the Aspen trips, Tiffany's allowance, they had been leveraging the company assets. They had taken out loans against the equity of the hotels. Then, they took out loans to pay the interest on the first loans. It was a classic Ponzi scheme, but the only victim was their own future. I scrolled to the most recent quarter. The numbers were catastrophic. They were bleeding cash at a rate of $200,000 a month. And then I saw it. The debt that Obsidian had just purchased. It was a mezzanine loan. High interest, short-term funding usually used as a last resort by desperate companies. The principal amount was $5 million. It was secured by a personal guarantee. I zoomed in on the signature page. My father had signed it. But right below his shaky signature was another one, Victoria Sterling. And below that, acting as a co-signer for marketing assets, was Tiffany Sterling. They had put everything up as collateral. The mansion, the cars, the art collection, even Tiffany's brand assets. The loan was in default. It had technically matured 48 hours ago. The bank that held it had panicked and sold the debt to us for pennies on the dollar just to get it off their books. That meant Obsidian Analytics now owned the Sterling family. That meant I owned them. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the screen illuminating the small, quiet room. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed immediately by a rush of adrenaline so potent it made my hands tremble. All that arrogance, all that cruelty, it was built on nothing. They were destitute. They were practically homeless. They just didn't know the eviction notice had been printed yet. I thought about the gift card. $1. They had looked at my son and decided he was worth $1 single because they believed they sat on a throne of gold. But they were sitting on a pile of dynamite. And they had just handed the match to the only person in the world who knew how to light it. I could save them. As a partner at Obsidian, I could restructure the debt. I could extend the terms, cut the interest rate, and implement a strict budget that would allow them to keep the house and the hotels. Albeit with a severe reduction in lifestyle, I could be the dutiful daughter who swoops in, fixes the mess, and asks for nothing but a thank you that would never come. I looked at the baby monitor on my desk. Leo was sleeping soundly, clutching his stuffed bear. Why does Grandma hate me? The question echoed again. No, I was done saving people who would drown me to stay afloat. I was done apologizing for my existence. I typed a message back to Silas. I accept the promotion, and I will take the file, but I want to handle the collection personally. No standard procedure. I want full discretion on the method of asset recovery, Silas replied instantly. It is your file. Partner, just make sure Obsidian gets its money. I closed the laptop. I walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline. Somewhere in the distance, on the hill, the Sterling mansion was glowing with Christmas lights, burning electricity they couldn't afford. They were sleeping in silk sheets, dreaming of their own importance. Let them sleep. Let them enjoy one last night of delusion. Tomorrow. I would not be Kendall the daughter. I would not be the poor relation. I would be the creditor. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I raised it in a mock toast to the empty room. "Merry Christmas, family," I whispered into the darkness. "The audit has begun." The morning sun had not yet touched the skyline when I began the autopsy. Most people think of an audit as a boring stack of paperwork, a tedious checking of boxes by people in gray suits. But to me, a forensic audit is a crime scene investigation. The numbers are the blood spatter, the ledgers are the fingerprints, and if you know where to look, the balance sheets tell you exactly who held the knife. I sat in my home office, surrounded by the hum of my servers. I had mirrored the entire financial database of Sterling Heights onto my private drive, because Obsidian Analytics had purchased the debt. We had the legal right to inspect the collateral, and since the collateral was literally everything my father owned, I had access to everything. I started with the marketing and public relations budget. In any failing company, this is always the first place the rats hide the cheese. It is a vague category, easy to inflate, hard to verify. According to the quarterly report, Sterling Heights had spent $450,000 on brand ambassadorship and influencer outreach in the last fiscal year. That was an astronomical sum for a hotel chain that hadn't opened a new location in a decade. I clicked on the folder. I began to drill down into the individual line items. The expenses were listed under a vendor called Lux Life Consulting. I ran a quick background check on the business license. It was a sole proprietorship registered to a P.O. box in Nevada. The registered agent? Tiffany Sterling. My sister wasn't just spending money. She was siphoning it. I pulled up the credit card statements associated with this account. The transactions were dizzying. There were charges for client dinners at Nobu that cost $3,000 on a Tuesday. There were office supplies purchased at Cartier. And then, I found it. A transaction dated December 21st. 2 days before the Christmas party. Item: leather goods. Vendor: Gucci flagship store. Amount: $1,250. I cross-referenced it with another charge on the same day. Item: travel agency services. Vendor: Disney VIP tours. Amount: $12,000. My blood ran cold, then hot. The handbag Bella was carrying, the gift from her parents, the trip to Disney World. It wasn't paid for by Tiffany's success. It wasn't even paid for by my father's generosity. It was paid for by the company. It was embezzlement, plain and simple. Tiffany had stolen corporate funds to play Santa Claus while handing my son a worthless piece of plastic. I saved the receipts to a folder I named The Glass Slipper, but Tiffany was just a symptom. She was greedy and stupid, a dangerous combination. But she wasn't smart enough to bring down an empire on her own. She needed an enabler. I moved on to the executive compensation packages. My father's salary had actually decreased in the last 2 years, which surprised me. He was taking a pay cut to keep the lights on. But there was a new name on the payroll. Someone listed as a strategic growth advisor. Marcus Thorne. He was being paid $20,000 a month as a retainer. I recognized the name. Marcus was Tiffany's fiancé of the month, a slick man with veneered teeth who claimed to be a venture capitalist. I ran his name through Obsidian's deep web search tools. The results came back in seconds. Marcus Thorne wasn't a venture capitalist. He was a ghost. He had 3 different social security numbers associated with his alias. He had been named in 2 lawsuits regarding Ponzi schemes in Florida, though he had never been criminally charged because he always managed to disappear before the indictments came down. I looked at the contracts he had convinced my father to sign. They were a nightmare. Marcus had persuaded my father to refinance the flagship hotel in downtown with a variable rate loan from a shadow lender. The terms were predatory. The interest rate started low but ballooned to 18% after 6 months. That 6-month mark had passed 3 weeks ago. Why would my father sign this? He was a businessman. He knew better. I pulled up the emails between my father and Marcus. They were painful to read. My father sounded desperate, confused. "Dad, Marcus, are you sure this is safe? The terms seem aggressive." Marcus: "Trust me. Arthur, This is Bridge Capital. We use this to renovate the penthouse suites. Tiffany launches the new campaign, and we refinance with a major bank in January at a prime rate. You have to spend money to make money. Do you want the legacy to die? That was the hook, the legacy. Marcus was manipulating my father's fear of irrelevance to drain the last drops of equity out of the company. And Tiffany was cheering him on, likely because Marcus promised her a cut of the loan proceeds for her shopping needs. I had enough evidence to send Tiffany to prison for fraud and Marcus to prison for financial elder abuse. But I wasn't done. I needed to understand the legal structure. If I took them down now, the company would collapse. The assets would be liquidated to pay the debts, and there would be nothing left. I didn't want to just destroy them. I wanted to take it from them. I wanted to own the castle they had kicked me out of. I navigated to the corporate governance files. I was looking for the shareholder agreement. Currently, the ownership was listed as Arthur Sterling, 51%, Victoria Sterling, 49%. I had 0, but something nagged at me. My mother, the first Mrs. Sterling, had come from money. The seed capital for the very first hotel had come from her trust fund, not my father's. When she died of cancer when I was 20, she had left a will. I remembered the reading of the will. I was in college. Victoria sat next to my father, holding his hand. The lawyer had read a brief statement saying that my mother left everything to my father to manage for the good of the family. I had never questioned it. I was young, grieving, and I trusted my father. But now, looking at the digital archive of the company's legal filings from 15 years ago, I saw a file marked superseded_governance_docs_2011. I opened it. It was a scanned copy of my mother's original last will and testament. It was notarized. It was valid. I read Clause 4, Section B. Upon the death of the grantor, 40% of the Class A voting shares shall be held in trust for the benefit of her daughter, Kendall Brookstone. Said shares shall transfer to her full control and ownership upon her 35th birthday. I froze. My 35th birthday was in 2 months, February 24th. My mother hadn't left everything to my father. She had left 40% of the controlling interest to me, protected in a trust until I was old enough to handle it. So, where were those shares? I searched for the amendment that had removed this clause. I found a document dated 3 months after my mother died. It was a waiver of interest, supposedly signed by me, relinquishing my rights to the trust in exchange for a one-time cash payment of $10,000. I stared at the signature at the bottom of the page. Kendall Sterling. It was a good forgery, but it was a forgery. The loop on the K was too wide. The slant was wrong, and more importantly, I had never seen this document in my life. I had never received $10,000. I looked at the witness signature on the document. Victoria Sterling. The rage that surged through me was different from the anger I felt at the party. That was hot. Reactive anger. This was cold. This was absolute zero. Victoria had stolen my inheritance. She had forged my signature to steal 40% of the company my mother helped build. She had turned me into a beggar in my own house. She had spent the last 15 years spending my money, wearing my profits, and then had the audacity to throw a $1 gift card at my son. I leaned back in my chair. The puzzle was complete. I had them. I had them on embezzlement. I had them on fraud. I had them on forgery. And in 2 months, legally, I would have the voting power to fire them all. But if I waited 2 months, Marcus and Tiffany might drain the accounts dry. I needed to stop the bleeding now. I needed to sow chaos in their ranks. I needed to make them turn on each other. I opened a new window. I accessed a secure, anonymous email server that Obsidian used for whistleblowing. I began to draft an email. To the Board of Directors, Sterling Heights, Hospitality Group. Subject: Urgent. Internal financial irregularities and unapproved vendor disbursements. I wrote in the dry, clinical language of an auditor. Dear members of the board, it has come to the attention of concerned parties that significant discrepancies exist in the fiscal year 25 operating budget. Specifically, The marketing allocation for Lux Life Consulting appears to be fraudulent, with funds being diverted for personal luxury expenditures unrelated to business operations. Furthermore, the board should be made aware that the recent refinancing of the downtown property via Thorn Capital carries undisclosed balloon payments that place the entire corporation in immediate default risk. Attached are digital copies of receipts totaling $150,000 in misappropriated funds, cross-referenced with personal travel itineraries of immediate family members of the CEO. A full forensic audit is recommended immediately to avoid criminal liability for all board members. Sincerely, a concerned shareholder. I attached the PDF of the Gucci receipt, the Disney invoice, and the comparison of Tiffany's Instagram posts wearing the items on the exact dates they were purchased. I hovered my finger over the send button. This was the first domino. Once the board, mostly old friends of my father, but men who loved their own money more than they loved him, saw this. They would panic. They would freeze the accounts. They would start asking questions my father couldn't answer. Tiffany would lose her credit line. Marcus would feel the heat and likely try to run. Victoria would be scrambling to cover her tracks. I pressed send. The screen flashed. Message sent. I took a deep breath. The silence in the room felt different now. It wasn't empty. It was pregnant with anticipation. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text from the bank alerting me that my rent check had cleared. Leaving my checking account with a balance of $400, I looked at the number, $400. Then I looked at the screen, at the document proving I was the rightful owner of 40% of a multi-million-dollar corporation. You really shouldn't have given him that gift card, Victoria, I said to the empty air. I stood up and walked to the small kitchenette. I needed coffee. I had a long day ahead of me. I had to go to my day job at Obsidian, sit in my glass office, and pretend I wasn't the executioner sharpening her axe. But first, I needed to make one more call. I needed a shark, not a loan shark, but a legal one. I needed the best estate attorney in the city to file an injunction the moment I gave the signal. I dialed the number of an old law school friend, Jessica, who was now a partner at a top-tier firm. It was 5 a.m, but I knew she would be up. Sharks don't sleep. Kendall? Her voice was raspy with sleep. Is everything okay? It's dawn. Everything is perfect, Jess, I said. I need to retain you. I'm initiating a hostile takeover. Of who? She asked, sounding suddenly awake. My family, I said. I'm going to need you to authenticate a will from 15 years ago. And Jess, I'm going to need you to be ruthless. I'm expensive. Kendall, she warned. Don't worry, I said, looking at the spreadsheet of Tiffany's embezzlement one last time. I know exactly where to find the money. I hung up. Operation Glass Slipper was officially active. The clock was ticking, not towards midnight, but towards the moment their carriage turned back into a pumpkin, and I was going to be the one to smash it. The modern battlefield is not a trench or a boardroom. It is a glowing rectangular screen held in the palm of a hand. As a partner at Obsidian Analytics, I knew how to manipulate markets with spreadsheets, but as a mother who had just watched her son be humiliated, I knew that the court of public opinion moved faster than any stock ticker. I sat in my corner office on the 42nd floor. The city of Chicago spread out beneath me like a circuit board. My door was closed. To my colleagues passing by, I was analyzing risk assessments for a merger. In reality, I was editing a video on my personal phone. I had created a burner email address and used it to register a new TikTok account. I named it the_real_Cinderella_story. No profile picture, no bio, just a ghost in the machine. I pulled up the footage from the Christmas party. I had watched it a dozen times, and every time Tiffany's voice hit my ears, the anger crystallized into something sharper. I used a simple editing tool to place a heavy blur over the faces. I did not want Leo's face out there, and legally, I needed to protect myself from a defamation suit by blurring the Sterlings just enough to claim plausible deniability. While leaving them recognizable to anyone who knew them, I kept the audio crisp. The audio was the weapon. I trimmed the clip to the essential 15 seconds. Frame 1. The pile of Gucci boxes and the fan of $100 bills. Frame 2. The thin white envelope landing on the floor. Frame 3. The expired dollar store gift card in a child's hand. Audio. Tiffany's shrill laugh, followed by the line that would haunt her. Bella is a princess, so naturally, her standards are different. But for your kid, $1 is probably more than his actual value anyway. I typed the caption. I wanted it to be dry, factual, and infuriating. POV. You go to your billionaire family's Christmas party. Your niece gets $5,000 and a trip to Disney. Your 7-year-old son gets an expired gift card for $1. Listen to the audio. Toxic family. Rich kid's narcissist. Christmas nightmare. Karma. I took a sip of my black coffee. I hovered my thumb over the post button. This was it. Once I did this, there was no going back. I was lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. I pressed post. For the first 20 minutes. Nothing happened. The video sat at 0 views. I went back to my actual work, reviewing the distressed debt files of a shipping company in Singapore. I forced myself not to look. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it began to vibrate continuously. A steady hum against the mahogany desk. I picked it up. Views, 10,000. Likes, 2,000. Comments, 400. I refreshed the page. Views, 50,000. The algorithm had caught the scent of outrage. The internet loves a villain, and Tiffany Sterling was a caricature of everything the working class hated. I started reading the comments. They were vicious. User 778. The way my jaw dropped. Did she really say he isn't worth $1? Who are these people? Eat the Rich 2026. I would have flipped that table. The audacity. Please tell me you cut them off. Detective_B. Wait, I recognize those drapes. And that voice? Isn't that the girl who tries to be a fashion influencer? The one who posts about hustle culture while living off her daddy? MamaBear_X. The expired card is the level of petty I can't even comprehend. That is evil. Pure evil. By lunchtime, the video had crossed 1 million views. It had been stitched by 3 major drama channels. People were dissecting the background details. They were analyzing the furniture. They were hunting. Then, the second wave hit. The wave I had been counting on. The former employees found the video. I saw a comment from a user named housekeeping_survivor. I worked for this family. That is the Sterling Mansion in Chicago. The woman speaking is Tiffany Sterling. She once fired me because I made eye contact with her princess daughter while I was cleaning the floor. They are monsters. Another comment popped up. Valet_guy_Chicago. Can confirm that is the Sterling Heights family. The mother, Victoria, screams at staff if the ice in her drink isn't perfectly square. They treat everyone like dirt. The doxing had begun. The hashtag Sterling Heights was starting to trend. And not because of their holiday discount packages. I logged into the Obsidian server and pulled up the internal communications dashboard for Sterling Heights, which I still had access to thanks to the audit privileges. The digital panic was unfolding in real time. Emails were flying back and forth between the Sterling Heights PR department and the executive suite. Subject: Urgent. Social media crisis. From PR Director. Tiffany Sterling. Victoria Sterling. We are receiving a massive influx of negative comments on the official hotel Instagram and Facebook pages. People are spamming the comments section with snake emojis and gift card emojis. We have had to disable comments. Tiffany, is there something going on? Please advise. I switched tabs to check Tiffany's personal Instagram. She had gone silent. Her usually active story feed was empty. Then, I saw it. She had turned off comments on her latest post. A photo of her and Bella holding the Gucci bag. But she was too slow. The captions on the reposts were brutal. Imagine flexing a bag bought with stolen money while your nephew starves. $1? You are the one worth nothing. I leaned back, watching the chaos unfurl. It was a beautiful, terrifying thing. The internet didn't care about nuance. They saw a bully, and they wanted blood. But I wasn't doing this for likes. I was doing this to shake the foundation. I pulled up the reservation system for the Sterling Heights flagship hotel. The phone lines were apparently lighting up, but not for bookings. Cancellation, cancellation, cancellation. A corporate client, a tech firm that had booked the grand ballroom for a 3-day conference in January, had sent an email to the sales manager due to the recent viral controversy involving the ownership family and allegations of discriminatory behavior. We feel it does not align with our company values to host our event at Sterling Heights. Please process our deposit refund immediately. That contract was worth $200,000. Gone. Just like that. I saw an email from Victoria to my father. Arthur, make it stop. People are calling the house phone. How did they get the number? Tiffany is crying in her room. Someone threw a carton of eggs at the front gate. Do something. My father's reply was short. I don't know what to do. The board is calling an emergency meeting. I closed the email window. The stage was set. The stock value of the private holding company, which was already inflated and fragile, was about to tank as the reputation damage leaked into their credit rating. Their lenders would get nervous. They would want to call in their loans, and that was exactly where I wanted them. I picked up my office phone and dialed a number in New York. It was the direct line to the distressed asset division of the bank that held the secondary mortgage on the Sterling estate, the one Marcus had convinced my father to sign. Harrison, a man answered. His voice clipped. It's Kendall Brookstone from Obsidian. I said, I'm calling on behalf of a private client. Valkyrie Holdings. Valkyrie? I don't know them. You don't need to, I said smoothly. They are an aggressive acquisition firm. They are interested in purchasing the Sterling debt you are currently holding. The Grade B loan. Harrison laughed. The Sterling loan? Why would anyone want that toxic waste? We were about to write it off as a loss. They are days away from default. Valkyrie likes toxic waste, I said. They specialize in aggressive restructuring. They are willing to pay you 40 cents on the dollar for the paper. Cash transfer today. There was a silence on the other end. 40 cents was better than zero. For a bank manager looking to clean up his books before the year ended, it was a lifeline. If you can wire the funds by 4 this afternoon, it's yours, Harrison said. I'll send over the assignment agreement. Pleasure doing business with you, I said. I hung up. I opened the banking portal for Valkyrie Holdings. It was a shell company I had set up 5 years ago for my own real estate investments. It sounded imposing, mythical. It sounded like Judgment Day. I authorized the transfer. It depleted a significant chunk of my personal savings, money I had scraped together for years, but it wasn't spending. It was investing. Within an hour, the paperwork came through. Kendall Brookstone, acting through Valkyrie Holdings, was now the primary creditor for the Sterling family mansion. I looked at the clock. It was 3 p.m. The viral video was now at 3 million views. The news outlets were starting to pick it up. Daily Mail had just tweeted an article. Heiress slams nephew with $1 gift card while daughter gets Gucci. The internet reacts. My family was famous. Finally. I imagined Tiffany sitting in her room, scrolling through the thousands of people calling her a monster. I imagined Victoria staring out the window at the egg yolk drying on her precious iron gates. I imagined my father looking at the cancellation notices piling up on his desk. They were drowning. And they had no idea that the person holding the life raft was the same person they had tried to push overboard. I sent a text to my lawyer. Jessica, Phase 1 complete. The debt is secured. The reputation is in flames. Prepare the foreclosure notice. Jessica replied instantly with a devil emoji. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. I felt a strange sense of calm. $1, I whispered to the glass. You thought the price was $1. I turned back to my desk. But the price is everything. The atmosphere inside the Sterling mansion had shifted from arrogance to a frantic, vibrating hysteria, It was the specific kind of panic that infects wealthy people when they realize their liquid assets have evaporated. I knew this because I was tracking their IP addresses. I could see them refreshing their bank balances every 5 minutes. I could see the frantic emails sent to Cayman Island accounts that were already empty. The concerned shareholder email I had sent in Part 3 had done its job. The board of directors had frozen the company's discretionary spending pending an internal review. They were suffocating, and I was about to offer them a tank of oxygen laced with carbon monoxide. My lawyer, Jessica, made the call at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. She introduced herself as the legal counsel for Valkyrie Holdings, a private equity firm specializing in distressed asset revitalization. She told my father that Valkyrie had been watching the Sterling brand and believed it was undervalued. She told him we were willing to inject $10 million of liquidity immediately. It was the lifeline they had been praying for, to maintain my cover, and to witness the final act of their hubris. I accepted an invitation to dinner that night. My father had called me, his voice trembling with a mixture of relief and superiority. He wanted the family together. He wanted to show me that despite the internet rumors, the Sterling name was bulletproof. I arrived at 7 in the evening. The house was quieter than usual. The staff had been reduced. I noticed the absence of fresh flowers in the foyer, a small but telling sign of their austerity measures. We sat in the formal dining room. The table was set with the good china, the gold-rimmed plates that cost $300 apiece. Victoria sat at the end of the table, her face a mask of foundation and tension. Tiffany was already on her 3rd glass of wine, her eyes bright and glassy. Marcus, the con artist boyfriend, sat next to her, looking like a man who was trying to figure out the fastest route to the exit. "So," Tiffany said, slicing into her steak with unnecessary force, "I hear you are still driving that tragic Honda. Kendall, it must be hard." I took a sip of water. "It gets me from point A to point B. Tiffany, that is all I need," Tiffany scoffed. "Point B being mediocrity. I assume, well, you will be happy to know that we are doing just fine, better than fine. Actually, Daddy just closed a deal with a major investment firm, Valkyrie Holdings. Have you heard of them?" "No, of course you haven't. They only deal with the elite." I fought the urge to smile. "Valkyrie Holdings," I repeated, tasting the irony. "Sounds powerful." "They are visionary," Marcus chimed in, smoothing his silk tie. "They recognize that the current cash flow issues are just a hiccup. They are putting in $10 million. We are going to expand. We are going to crush the competition." "And the internet trolls?" I asked, looking directly at Victoria. "The ones calling for a boycott because you gave your grandson a $1 gift card?" Victoria stiffened. She set her fork down with a sharp clatter. "That will blow over. People have short memories. Once we announce this partnership, the stock will soar. We are Sterlings. Kendall, we do not fail. We reinvent." "Besides," Tiffany added, waving her wine glass dangerously close to the edge of the table, "those people are just jealous. They are sad little people living in sad little houses. They don't understand that a princess like Bella deserves the best. Speaking of Bella, she's in the playroom. She didn't want to come out. She's upset because I told her the pony has to wait until next week." "A tragedy," I said dryly. I reached into my bag. I actually brought Bella a late Christmas present, since the last one caused such a stir. I placed a slim hardcover book on the table. It was titled The Wealthy Barber, The Common Sense Guide to Becoming Financially Independent. It was a classic book on financial literacy, saving, and the value of compound interest. Tiffany picked it up as if it were a dead rat. She read the title and burst out laughing. "A book? About saving money?" She looked at me with genuine pity. "Oh, Kendall, this is so cute. You think we need to save? We make money. Sweetie, we don't hoard it like peasants." She tossed the book over her shoulder. It landed with a thud in the wastebasket near the sideboard. "Bella doesn't read things like that," Tiffany sneered. "She has people to manage her money. She might not always," I said, my voice quiet. "Legacies disappear. Tiffany, especially when you spend the principal. Stop it, my father snapped. He looked gray and exhausted. We are not here to argue. We are here to celebrate. The Valkyrie deal is signing tonight. Their courier is on the way with the papers. Tonight? I asked. That seems fast. Did you have your lawyers look at it? We don't have time for the lawyers to nitpick, Marcus said quickly. The audit starts in 3 days. We need the funds in the account by tomorrow morning. Valkyrie agreed to expedite the process, but we have to sign now. It's a standard bridge loan. Standard, I echoed. Just then, the doorbell rang. A courier walked in, carrying a thick leather portfolio. He placed it on the dining table, pushing aside the centerpiece. Signatures required from Arthur Sterling, Victoria Sterling, and Tiffany Sterling, the courier said professionally. My father opened the folder. I watched them. I watched them the way a wolf watches a deer drinking from a poisoned stream. Here is the 10 million, my father said, pointing to the figure on the first page. Thank God. Wait, I said, leaning forward. Dad, look at the collateral clause. Page 42. Marcus shot me a glare. It is standard boilerplate. Kendall, don't complicate things. You don't understand high finance. I understand that cross-collateralization of personal assets is not standard, I said. Dad, read it. It says that in the event of a default, or a breach of covenant, the lender has the right to seize not just the company assets, but all personal property of the guarantors. That means this house, Victoria's jewelry, Tiffany's car, everything. Victoria laughed. Default? We aren't going to default. We just need the cash to clear the books for the audit. Once the audit is done, we refinance with the big banks and pay Valkyrie back. It's a formality. It also says, I continued, pressing just hard enough to make them feel like I was the annoyance, not the threat, that the lender can call the loan immediately if there is a material adverse change in the company's reputation. You know, like a viral TikTok video. You are just trying to scare us because you are jealous, Tiffany spat. She grabbed the pen. I am signing. I want my life back. I want my credit cards unlocked. Tiffany signed her name with a flourish. Tiffany Sterling. She handed the pen to Victoria. Kendall is just bitter, Victoria said, looking at me with disdain. She wants us to be as miserable as she is in that little apartment. We are taking the money. Victoria signed. My father hesitated. He held the pen over the paper. He looked at me. For a second, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He knew me. He knew I was smart. Dad, I said softly, if you sign that, there is no going back. I have to. Kendall, he whispered. I have no choice. He signed. The trap snapped shut. They hadn't read the fine print on page 50, the clause that defined material adverse change so broadly that I could trigger it by simply breathing, the clause that gave Valkyrie Holdings, gave me, the power of confession of judgment, meaning they waived their right to defend themselves in court if I called the loan. They had just handed me the deed to their lives in exchange for $10 million that I would simply reclaim when I seized the company. The courier took the papers, bowed, and left. Done, Marcus said, letting out a long breath. We are saved. To the Sterlings, Victoria said, raising her glass. Unbreakable. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. I should go, I said. I have work to do early tomorrow. Going back to the cubicle? Tiffany teased. Have fun filing papers. Something like that, I said. I walked to the wastebasket and picked up the book I had bought for Bella. I dusted off the cover. I'll keep this, I said. One of you might need it sooner than you think. Get out, Tiffany said, rolling her eyes. I walked to the front door. My father followed me. Kendall, he said in the hallway, thank you for coming. I know things are strained, but this money changes everything. Maybe now we can help you. Maybe we can set up a small trust for Leo. $5,000 or so. He was trying to be kind. He truly was. But it was the kindness of a king tossing a crumb to a beggar, unaware that the beggar had just bought his kingdom. "Don't worry about Leo, Dad," I said, putting my hand on the doorknob. "Leo is going to be just fine. He is going to have everything he deserves." "I hope so," he said. "Drive safe. That car of yours sounds terrible." "It's paid for," I said. "Good night, Dad." I walked out into the cold night air. The gate closed behind me with a heavy metallic clang. I got into my car and locked the doors. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jessica. "They signed," I said. "All of them?" Jessica asked. "All of them. Personal guarantees. The house, the cars, the art, the stock portfolios. It is all in the net." "Excellent," Jessica said. "The funds are being wired to their corporate account now. They will feel rich for about 12 hours. "When do we pull the trigger?" I asked. "Tomorrow is your birthday, isn't it?" Jessica asked. "Yes, I turned 35. "Happy birthday." Kendall. The clause in your mother's will activates at midnight. You get your 40% voting block. And combined with the debt default we are going to trigger, you will have absolute control by lunchtime. "Do it," I said. "Let them wake up thinking they won. I want the fall to be absolute." I started the engine. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror at the lighted windows of the mansion. I could see shadows moving in the dining room. They were probably opening another bottle of wine. They were probably toasting to their brilliance. They had fallen for the oldest trick in the book. They were so blinded by the glare of the gold that they didn't see the hook until it was already through their cheek. The princess had her castle back, for one more night, but tomorrow, the landlord was coming to collect, and the rent was due in blood. February 24th. I woke up at 5 in the morning on my 35th birthday. The sky outside my window was a bruise of purple and gray, heavy with the threat of snow. I did not need an alarm. My body was humming with a frequency that felt less like excitement and more like the low, dangerous voltage of an electric fence. Today was the day. According to the laws of probate and the specific stipulations of my mother's will, a document that had been buried, ignored, and forged into oblivion by my stepmother, I was now legally the owner of 40% of the voting shares of Sterling Heights. I sat up and reached for my phone. There were no happy birthday texts from my family. There never were. Usually, this silence would have stung, a familiar ache in the center of my chest. Today, it felt like a tactical advantage. They had forgotten the date. They had forgotten that time changes things. They had forgotten that little girls grow up into women who hire forensic accountants. I made coffee. I watched the steam rise. Then, at exactly 8 in the morning, when the courthouse doors unlocked, my lawyer Jessica filed the motion. It was a beautiful, lethal stack of paperwork. It included the authenticated original will, the proof of the forged waiver from 15 years ago, and an immediate injunction freezing the board's ability to issue new stock. But that was just the jab. The uppercut came from Valkyrie Holdings. At 8:15, I logged into the Valkyrie secure portal. I pulled up the loan agreement my family had signed just 48 hours ago. They had been so desperate for the $10 million, so eager to keep up appearances, that they had ignored the material adverse change clause. I had defined material adverse change to include any public scandal reaching over 1 million social media impressions that could negatively impact the lender's confidence. My Real Cinderella TikTok video was now at 4 million views. I typed out the official notice of acceleration. This legal document demanded the immediate repayment of the full principal, $10 million, plus interest and penalties, since they had already spent $2 million of it to pay off urgent vendors yesterday. They could not pay it back. That meant they were in default, and because of the confession of judgment clause they had signed, they had waived their right to a trial. I didn't need to sue them. I didn't need a judge to hear their side of the story. I just needed to file the paper, and the sheriff would execute the seizure. I pressed send. The digital notification flew through the fiber optic cables of the city, landing in the inbox of the Sterling Heights CFO, my father, and Victoria. I took a sip of coffee. Happy birthday, Kendall, I whispered to the empty kitchen. Now, I waited for the screams. They didn't start immediately. These things take time to propagate through the banking system. It starts with a red flag on a server in New Jersey. Then a freeze code is attached to a social security number. Then, the individual points of sale are updated by 10 in the morning. I was sitting at my desk at Obsidian, watching the internal communications of Sterling Heights. Email from CFO to Arthur Sterling. Subject: urgent. Bank accounts locked, Arthur. I am trying to run payroll, and the system is rejecting the transfer. The bank says our master operating account has been frozen by a creditor lien. Who is Valkyrie Holdings? Why are they claiming total seizure? Please call me. I smiled. My father wouldn't be checking his email. He was likely on the golf course, trying to network his way out of his anxiety. But Victoria and Tiffany? They were on a mission. I knew from Tiffany's Instagram story, posted 20 minutes ago, that they were at the Chanel boutique on Michigan Avenue. They were doing last-minute shopping for the Disney trip. Bella needed a new wardrobe for the VIP tour. I switched tabs to a live police scanner feed for the downtown district. It was a habit of mine. 11 in the morning. My phone buzzed. It was a Google alert for Tiffany Sterling. A new video had just been uploaded to Twitter. It wasn't from me. It was from a bystander. I clicked the link. The video was shaky, filmed vertically from behind a display of sunglasses. Tiffany was standing at the counter of Chanel. She was wearing a white fur coat and holding a stack of clothes that easily totaled $20,000. Bella was standing next to her, holding a large stuffed bear that looked expensive. Victoria was inspecting a silk scarf nearby. The sales associate, a young woman who looked terrified, was holding Tiffany's black credit card. "I am sorry, Ms. Sterling," the associate said, her voice audible over the store's ambient music. The card was declined. It says, "Refer to issuer, do not honor." "Try it again," Tiffany snapped, flipping her hair. "It is a black card. It has no limit. Your machine is probably broken. Use the chip." "I did, ma'am. I tried it 3 times. It is declined." "Well, use my mother's card," Tiffany said, gesturing to Victoria. Victoria walked over, looking annoyed. She pulled out her platinum card. "Honestly, Tiffany, you probably triggered a fraud alert with all that online shopping. Here." She handed over the card. The associate inserted it. Beep, beep, beep. The sound was sharp and final. "I am sorry, Mrs. Sterling," the associate said, shrinking back. "This one is declined too. The code is legal seizure." "Legal seizure?" Victoria's voice went up an octave. "That is ridiculous. We just deposited $10 million yesterday. Do you know who we are? We own Sterling Heights." "I understand that, ma'am, but the system won't let me process the sale. Maybe you have another form of payment?" "I don't carry cash," Victoria screamed. "This is humiliating. I'm going to call your manager. I am going to have you fired." "Ma'am, please lower your voice." A security guard stepped into the frame. "Don't you touch me," Tiffany yelled. She grabbed the bags on the counter. "I am taking these. My father will wire you the money later. Come on, Bella." "Ma'am, you cannot leave with the merchandise," the guard said, blocking her path. Then, the meltdown happened. The pressure of the last week, the public shaming, the fear, and now this refusal. It all exploded. Tiffany threw the bag of clothes at the guard. "This is trash anyway," she shrieked. "You are all trash. I am a Sterling. We are royalty in this city." Bella, seeing her mother scream, started to wail. "My Disney trip," Bella cried, stomping her foot. "You promised. I want my Gucci. I want my pony." "Shut up, Bella." Tiffany turned on her daughter. "Just shut up." The camera zoomed in on Victoria, who was frantically dialing her phone, her face a mask of sheer panic. "Arthur!" she screamed into the phone. "Arthur, pick up. The cards aren't working. They are threatening to call the police." The video ended. I refreshed the page. 10,000 views in 5 minutes. The caption read, "The princess just got her crown snatched at Chanel. Sterling meltdown karma." I leaned back in my chair. It was brutal. It was ugly. But it was necessary. They had lived in a bubble of invincibility for so long that only a total vacuum could pop it. I checked the time. 12:30. My father would be finding out right about now. He would be at the gas station near the country club, trying to fill up his Mercedes. Sure enough, at 12:45, my personal cell phone rang. The caller ID said, "Dad." I let it ring 3 times. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to wonder if I would answer. I wanted him to remember every time he had sent my calls to voicemail when I needed help with Leo's medical bills or rent. I picked up on the 4th ring. "Hello?" I said, my voice cool and professional. "Kendall?" His voice was unrecognizable. It was high, thin, and breathless. "Kendall, are you there?" "I'm at work. Dad, what is it?" "I have a problem. A small problem." He paused, and I heard the sound of cars rushing by in the background. "I am at the Shell station on 4th. My card has a glitch with the bank, a system error. They froze everything." "That sounds inconvenient," I said. "It is more than inconvenient," he snapped, then caught himself. "Kendall, listen, I have no gas. The tank is empty. I can't get home, and I have to get home to fix this banking mess. Victoria is calling me screaming from the mall. It is chaos." "What do you want me to do, Dad?" "I need you to transfer me some money. Just a little, or come down here. I need $500. $500? I asked. "For gas?" "Well, I need cash to get Victoria out of a situation, and I need to buy a few things. Please, Kendall, I will pay you back tomorrow. Triple. Just wire me 500. The silence on the line stretched out. I could hear his heavy breathing. I could hear the desperation. This was the man who had told me I was cut off 10 years ago. This was the man who had signed away my inheritance. This was the man who had watched his wife throw a $1 gift card at my son. "I can't do that, Dad," I said. "What do you mean you can't? You have a job. You said you were doing well." "I am," I said, "but I don't have $500 for you." "Kendall, don't be spiteful. I am your father. I am stranded." "I know," I said. "It feels terrible, doesn't it? To be stranded. To be looked at like you are nothing because a piece of plastic doesn't work." "Kendall!" "I don't have $500, Dad," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was colder than the wind outside. "I only have a $1 gift card, and it is expired." There was a long silence. I heard him gasp. "You," he stammered. "You know something." "What is happening? Why are the accounts frozen? Who is Valkyrie Holdings?" "Valkyrie Holdings is the entity that currently owns the deed to your house, the title to your car, and the controlling interest in your company," I said. "And as of 8 o'clock this morning, Valkyrie Holdings has called the loan." "No," he whispered. "That's impossible. We just signed, we have time." "You had time," I corrected. "You wasted it. You spent it on Gucci bags and fake friends. You spent it on arrogance." "Kendall, please." He started to cry. It was a broken, pathetic sound. "I am ruined. They will take everything. I will be on the street." "Not necessarily," I said. "There is one way out." "Anything," he sobbed. "I will do anything." "Be at the Sterling Heights boardroom tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock sharp," I commanded. "Bring Victoria. Bring Tiffany. Bring the keys to the company vault." "Why?" he asked. "Who are we meeting?" "You are meeting the new owner of Sterling Heights," I said. "Who is it?" he asked. "Is it a competitor? Is it the Hilton Group?" "You will see," I said. "And Dad? Don't be late. The new owner hates tardiness. It shows a lack of value." I hung up the phone. I stared at the screen for a moment, then placed it face down on the desk. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the massive release of adrenaline. It was done. The net was closed. I stood up and walked to the closet in my office. I pulled out a garment bag I had brought with me that morning. Inside was a suit I had ordered from Italy 3 months ago. It was charcoal gray, tailored to within a millimeter of perfection. It was a power suit. It was armor. I looked at my reflection in the glass of the window. I didn't see the scared girl who had left home 10 years ago with a baby in her arms. I saw a predator who had just taken down a mammoth. I spent the rest of the afternoon handling the logistics. I spoke to the head of security at Sterling Heights, a man named Frank who had always been kind to me when I was a child. "Frank," I said, "this is Kendall. Miss Kendall?" He sounded surprised. "It has been a long time." "It has. Listen, Frank, there is going to be a transition of power tomorrow. I need you to secure the building, revoke the access badges for Arthur, Victoria, and Tiffany Sterling effective immediately. But let them into the building one last time tomorrow morning at 9. Escort them to the boardroom. Do not let them take anything from their offices. No files, no computers, nothing." "On whose authority?" Frank asked, hesitant. "On the authority of the majority shareholder," I said. "And Frank, if you do this, your pension is secure. In fact, it just got a raise." "Understood, ma'am," Frank said, his voice snapping to attention. "I never liked how they treated you anyway." "Thank you, Frank." I left the office at 6. The city was dark, the streetlights reflecting off the wet pavement. I drove to the daycare to pick up Leo. When he saw me, he ran over, holding a drawing. It was a picture of a superhero. "Who is that?" I asked, kneeling down to hug him. "It's you, Mommy," he said. "You are flying." I held him tight, burying my face in his neck. He smelled like crayons and innocence. He had no idea that his mother had just effectively orphaned herself to ensure his future. He had no idea that the princess who had mocked him was currently probably sitting in a dark mansion with no heat, crying over a canceled trip to a theme park. "We are going to have a special dinner tonight, Leo," I said. "Pizza? With extra pepperoni?" "Yes," he cheered. As we drove home, I drove past the Sterling estate. I couldn't help it. I parked the car down the block, in the shadows. The house was dark. The massive Christmas tree in the window was unlit. The driveway, usually full of cars, was empty except for my father's Mercedes, which must have been towed home or pushed. It looked like a mausoleum. I touched the pocket of my coat, where the plastic gift card still sat. It was my talisman. It was the reminder of why I had to be this cruel. They had taught me that love was transactional. They had taught me that worth was a number. So I had simply corrected the math. "Mommy, why are we stopping?" Leo asked. "Just looking at the view, baby," I said. "It looks different in the dark, doesn't it?" "It looks scary," Leo said. "It used to be," I said, putting the car in gear. "But not anymore. Now, it's just a house, and tomorrow, we are going to clean it out." I drove away. Leaving the darkness behind me, the siege was over. The occupation was about to begin. The boardroom of Sterling Heights was designed to intimidate. It was a glass-walled aquarium suspended 40 stories above the Chicago streets, centered around a table made of a single slab of black walnut that cost more than my first apartment. For years, my father had sat at the head of this table like a king, dispensing judgments and bonuses. Today, he sat in one of the guest chairs. His posture collapsed, his face the color of old parchment. I watched them from the security feed in the anteroom before I entered. They looked like the survivors of a shipwreck who had washed up on a hostile shore. My father was wearing a suit that looked slept in. Victoria was wearing oversized sunglasses indoors, likely to hide swollen eyes, and she kept clutching her chest as if she were checking to see if her heart was still beating. Tiffany was pacing, her phone in her hand, aggressively thumbing the screen. Though I knew she had no service, I had ordered the IT department to jam the signal in that specific room. Beside me, Jessica, my attorney, checked her watch. "It is 9 o'clock exactly," she said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Showtime, Madam Chairwoman." Let's go, I said. I smoothed the lapels of my charcoal suit. It was not just clothing, it was a statement. It was tailored to fit me like a second skin. Sharp angles and expensive fabric that screamed competency. I had swept my hair back into a severe, sleek bun. I wore no jewelry except for a vintage watch, my mother's, that I had retrieved from a safety deposit box that morning. We walked to the double doors. Frank, the head of security, stood there. He gave me a subtle nod and pulled the doors open. The sound of my heels on the polished concrete floor was a rhythmic, echoing click-clack, click-clack. It was the only sound in the room. The three Sterlings looked up. For a moment, there was just confusion. They saw me, but they didn't see me. They saw Kendall the failure, Kendall the poor relation. Kendall who drove a Honda. Tiffany was the first to break the silence. Her reflex for condescension was faster than her brain's ability to process reality. "Oh, thank God." She let out a breathy, annoyed laugh. "Finally. Did you bring coffee? Dad said you were coming, but I didn't think you would actually show up to what? Beg for money too?" She looked at the empty space in my hands. "Wait, you didn't bring coffee? Then what are you doing here? Kendall? The cleaning crew meets in the basement." I didn't stop walking. I moved toward the head of the table, my father's seat. I pulled out the massive leather chair. It was heavy, but I moved it with one hand. I sat down. I placed my hands on the table, fingers interlaced, and looked at them. "You are in my seat, Tiffany," I said softly. "Excuse me?" Tiffany blinked, her mouth hanging open. "Have you lost your mind? Get up before Dad calls security." "I am security," I said. My father was staring at me. His eyes were wide, darting from my face to the expensive suit, to the way Jessica was standing behind my right shoulder like a Praetorian guard. He was putting the pieces together, but the picture was too terrifying for him to accept. "Kendall?" he rasped. "Where is the buyer? Where is the representative from Valkyrie Holdings?" I looked at Jessica. She stepped forward, opening a leather folder. "Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling, Miss Sterling," Jessica began, her voice projecting with courtroom authority. "Please allow me to make the formal introductions. You are currently seated in the presence of Ms. Kendall Brookstone. She is the founder and sole proprietor of Valkyrie Holdings." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum that sucked the oxygen out of the room. "What?" Victoria whispered. "That's a lie. Kendall doesn't have money. She has a coupon book." "Furthermore," Jessica continued, ignoring the interruption, "as of midnight last night, pursuant to the activation of the trust clause in the last will and testament of the late Eleanor Sterling, Ms. Brookstone assumed control of her inherited 40% of the voting stock of this corporation. Additionally, due to the default on the $10 million loan issued by Valkyrie Holdings, a loan personally guaranteed by all of you, Miss Kay Brookstone has exercised her right to convert that debt into equity." Jessica slapped a document onto the table. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at the majority shareholder. Ms. Brookstone now owns 70% of Sterling Heights. She is the chairwoman of the board. She is the CEO, and she is your landlord." Victoria made a sound like a deflating tire. Her hand went to her forehead. She fluttered her eyes theatrically, and she slumped sideways in her chair, sliding toward the floor. "Oh, stop it. Victoria," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a whip. "The carpet is industrial grade. It is not comfortable. Get up." Victoria froze mid-slump. She opened one eye, realized no one was rushing to help her, and slowly pulled herself back up. Her face was a mask of hatred and shock. "You," my father whispered, "you did this? You bought the debt?" "I bought the debt," I confirmed. "And I bought your freedom, but you sold it cheap." "You tricked us," Tiffany screamed, slamming her hand on the table. "You set us up. That video, the gift card, was all a trap." "It was a test," I corrected. "And you failed. You failed as business owners. You failed as family. And you failed as human beings. I reached into my briefcase, a sleek leather attaché that sat by my feet. I pulled out 3 thick binders. I threw them onto the table. They landed with a heavy, satisfying thud that made the water glasses tremble. Let's discuss the exit strategy, I said. I opened the first binder. Tiffany, I said, looking at my sister. This contains the forensic audit of Lux Life Consulting. It details 3 years of systematic embezzlement, $150,000 in misappropriated corporate funds used for personal luxury goods. That is a felony. In the state of Illinois, grand larceny of this magnitude carries a sentence of 3 to 7 years in prison. Tiffany's face went white. She looked at Marcus, but Marcus was staring at his shoes, trying to make himself invisible. I didn't, she stammered. It was marketing. I am an influencer. You are a thief, I said, and I have the receipts, the Gucci bag, the Disney trip, evidence. I opened the second binder. Victoria, I said, this one is for you. It contains the analysis of the document you filed 15 years ago, the waiver of my inheritance. We had a handwriting expert analyze it this morning. He is prepared to testify in court that the signature is a forgery. That is fraud. That is also a felony. Victoria shrank back in her chair, her lips trembling. I did it for your father. We needed the capital. You did it because you are greedy, I said. I looked at my father. He looked like a ghost. And you, Dad, I said. You aren't a criminal. You are just weak. You let them loot the legacy Mom built. You signed documents you didn't read. You mortgaged the future to pay for the appearance of the present. Gross negligence. Breach of fiduciary duty. I could sue you for every penny you have left. But guess what? You don't have any pennies left. Valkyrie Holdings owns them all. I closed the binders. I leaned back in the chair, crossing my legs. I looked at them. My family. The people who had made me feel small for a decade. They looked so small now. So here's the situation, I said calmly. I have enough evidence on this table to send Tiffany to prison until Bella is in high school. I have enough to send Victoria to prison for fraud. And I have the legal right to evict all of you from the mansion by 5 o'clock this afternoon. I can strip you of your name, your home, and your freedom. My father put his head in his hands and began to sob. It was a dry, heaving sound. Please, he choked out. Kendall, we are family. Now we are family? I asked. When you need mercy? Where was the family when Leo was opening an expired gift card? Where was the family when you told me I was worth less than $1? We are sorry, Tiffany blubbered, tears streaming down her face, ruining her spray tan. I am sorry. Please don't send me to jail. I can't go to jail. I'm too pretty for jail. I looked at her. It was pathetic. It was satisfying. I am not going to send you to jail, I said. They all looked up, hope flickering in their eyes. And I am not going to evict you, yet. What do you want? Victoria asked, her voice trembling. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. I controlled it all now. The view was different from this side of the glass. I don't want your apologies, I said, turning back to face them. Apologies are words. Words are cheap. I want action. I want restitution. We don't have money, my father said. I know, I said. But you have labor, and you have pride. I am going to take both. I walked back to the table and placed a single sheet of paper in front of them. I have a different price in mind, I said. One that will cost you a lot more than money. What is it? Tiffany asked, eyeing the paper. Read it, I said. My father picked up the paper. His hands shook as he read. This, he whispered. You can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life, I said. You have 2 choices. Option A. I call the district attorney in 10 minutes, hand over these binders, and you all leave here in handcuffs. Option B. You agree to my terms, unconditionally. What are the terms? Victoria demanded. Total surrender, I said. And a public lesson in humility. I looked at Tiffany. You like reality TV, don't you? Tiffany? You like living your life on camera? Tiffany nodded dumbly. Good, I said, because your next performance is going to be the most viral thing you have ever done. But this time, you won't be playing the princess. I checked my watch. You have 5 minutes to decide, I said. The police are already on standby in the lobby. Tick-tock. The room fell silent again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence of a guillotine blade hovering at the top of the track, waiting for gravity to do its work. I sat back down in my father's chair and waited. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to scream. I had the ledger. And the ledger was balanced. The silence in the boardroom was not empty. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air inside a submarine that had dived too deep. My father was staring at the single sheet of paper as if it were a death warrant. Victoria was fanning herself with a napkin, her eyes darting around the room, looking for an exit that did not exist. Tiffany was shaking, her face flushed with a mixture of rage and terror. "This is insane," Tiffany whispered, her voice cracking. "You can't make us do this. It is slavery." "It is plea bargaining," I corrected calmly. "And considering the alternative is a federal indictment for embezzlement and fraud. I would say it is extremely generous." I leaned forward, clasping my hands on top of the mahogany table. "Let's walk through the terms, shall we? Just so there is no confusion," I pointed to the first paragraph of the document. "Condition number 1, the apology," Victoria scoffed. "We already said we were sorry. You want us to say it again? Fine, I am sorry. There, are we done?" "Not quite," I said. "A private apology is easy. It cost you nothing. But the humiliation you inflicted on my son was public. It was a spectacle. So, the remedy must match the injury." I tapped the glass table with my fingernail. "Tomorrow at noon, we will host a company-wide live stream. It will be broadcast to all employees, shareholders, and the general public via the company's social media channels. You, Victoria, and you, Tiffany, will sit in front of the camera. You will read a prepared statement, written by me, in which you admit to discriminatory behavior, bullying a 7-year-old child, and fostering a toxic work environment." "I will not!" Victoria shrieked. "I have a reputation in this city. I am on the board of the symphony. If I do that, I will be a pariah." "You are already a pariah, Victoria," I said coldly. "The only difference is that right now, people think you are just mean. After tomorrow, they will know you are penitent. It is the only way to salvage the brand. You do it, or I release the forensic audit to the board of the symphony. I wonder how they will feel about a treasurer who forges signatures." Victoria shut her mouth, her face turning a pale shade of gray. She knew I had her. "Condition number 2, I continued, shifting my gaze to my sister. "This one is specifically for you, Tiffany." Tiffany crossed her arms, glaring at me. "What, you want me to give up my Instagram? Fine, I will delete the app." "Oh, no," I smiled. "I want you to keep the app. I want you to document your new journey." I slid a folder across the table. It contained a standard employment contract for an entry-level position. "You have spent years treating the staff of this hotel like furniture. You fired a housekeeper last year, Maria, because she accidentally forgot to put a mint on your pillow. You screamed at her. You called her lazy. You took her livelihood away because you were having a bad hair day." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "So? She was incompetent. Help is hard to find." "Maria is actually an excellent worker," I said. "In fact, I rehired her this morning. She is now the shift supervisor for the housekeeping department." Tiffany looked confused. "So what?" "So," I said, my voice dropping to a hard, iron register. "For the next 6 months, you are going to work for her." "Excuse me?" Tiffany laughed. A high, nervous sound. "I don't work. I am a brand ambassador." "Not anymore," I said. "Your title is Junior Housekeeping Associate. You will work 5 days a week, from 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. You will scrub toilets, you will change sheets, you will pick up dirty towels, and you will do it all under Maria's direct supervision. If she reports that you are late, or rude, or lazy, even once, the deal is void, and I call the district attorney." "You are joking," Tiffany said, her eyes widening. "I can't clean toilets. I have a manicure. I have status." "You have a criminal record waiting to happen," I reminded her. "You stole $150,000. Tiffany, you can work it off at minimum wage, which, by the way, will give you a great appreciation for the value of $1. Or you can go to a place where the toilets are made of steel and you don't get to flush them yourself." Tiffany stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I won't do it. You are just trying to humiliate me. You are jealous because I am the pretty one. You are a bitter, lonely witch." I didn't blink. I let her scream. It was the sound of a spoiled child realizing the world didn't revolve around her. "Sit down," my father said. His voice was weak, broken. "Daddy," Tiffany cried, turning to him. Tell her she can't make me be a maid." "Sit down, Tiffany," my father repeated, looking at the table. "We have no choice." Tiffany slumped back into her chair, sobbing into her hands. "Condition number 3, I said, ignoring her tears. "This concerns Bella." Tiffany's head snapped up. "Leave my daughter out of this. She is a child." "Exactly," I said. "She is a child you are ruining. You are turning her into a monster. Tiffany, you are teaching her that money makes her superior. I am going to save her from you." "You can't take her," Tiffany screamed. "I don't want custody." I said, "But I control the purse strings now. Effective immediately. Bella's trust fund is frozen. The allowance is 0. The private school tuition will no longer be paid by the company." "But she loves her school," Tiffany wailed. "All her friends are there." "She is 8, I said. "She will make new friends. She will attend the local public school, just like Leo does. It is a good school. It has a great diversity of students who will teach her that the world is bigger than a country club." "And," I added, pointing to the pile of receipts, "all the items purchased with embezzled funds, the Gucci bag, the designer clothes, the electronics, must be returned. We will sell them to recoup a fraction of what you stole." "She will be devastated," Tiffany cried. "She is a princess." "She is a little girl." I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "She is a little girl who told her cousin he looked poor because you taught her to. You are abusing that child with your vanity. I am stripping away the privilege so she has a chance to develop a character." "You are evil," Tiffany hissed, her face contorted with hate. "You are absolute evil. You are enjoying this. You are loving seeing us suffer. How can you sleep at night? You gave us a $1 gift card? No. You are doing this over a gift card? It is petty." "It is not about the card, Tiffany," I said quietly. "It is," she screamed. "It is all because you are mad about a stupid $1 card. It was a joke. You have no sense of humor. You are ruining our lives over $1. I looked at her. She truly didn't get it. She thought this was about money. She thought this was about a transactional slight. She didn't understand that the gift card was just the symbol of a decade of dehumanization. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my phone. "You think $1 is a joke?" I asked. I tapped the screen. I connected via Bluetooth to the boardroom's audio system. "Let's listen to what you really think about the value of $1. I pressed play. My voice filled the room. Recording from the pocket of my coat that night, Tiffany's voice, amplified and crystal clear. "Don't be sad. Kendall, Bella is a princess. So naturally, her standards are different. But for your kid, honestly, $1 is probably more than his actual value anyway." The recording ended. The silence that followed was suffocating. I looked at Tiffany. Her face had lost all its color. She looked at my father, who had closed his eyes in shame. She looked at Victoria, who was staring at the wall. "You said my son was worth less than $1, I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. You didn't just insult him, you quantified him. You put a price tag on his humanity, and you decided it was zero. I stood up and walked around the table until I was standing right behind Tiffany. I leaned down, bringing my face close to her ear. So tell me, Tiffany, I whispered, what is your value right now? Without the money? Without the credit cards? Without the title? You are a thief. You are a bully. And you are broke. I stood up straight and looked at all of them. I am actually being generous. I am giving you a chance to earn your value back. I am giving you the dignity of labor. I am giving you the opportunity to be humble. That is worth a lot more than $1. I walked back to the head of the table. I picked up the pen and held it out. This is the deal, I said. You sign it, and we start the rehabilitation of the Sterling family. You refuse, and Jessica calls the police. They are downstairs. They have a warrant ready. I looked at my watch. You have 60 seconds. My father was the first to move. He reached out a shaking hand and took the pen. He didn't look at me. He signed his name on the line marked Arthur Sterling. He slid the paper to Victoria. Victoria wiped a tear from under her sunglasses. She looked at the paper as if it were contaminated. I can't be on a live stream, she whimpered. 50 seconds, I said. She signed. Victoria Sterling. She slid the paper to Tiffany. Tiffany stared at it. She was breathing hard, hyperventilating. She looked at the clause about the housekeeping. She looked at the clause about the public school. It was the death of her ego. It was the end of her fantasy. I hate you, she whispered, looking up at me. I will hate you forever for this. That is fine, I said. I don't need your love. I need your compliance. 30 seconds. Tiffany picked up the pen. She gripped it so hard her knuckles turned white. She signed, Tiffany Sterling. She threw the pen across the room. It hit the glass wall with a sharp crack. Done, she screamed. Are you happy now? You won. You own us. I picked up the document. I checked the signatures. They were valid. I handed the paper to Jessica, who tucked it into her briefcase with a satisfied snap of the lock. I am not happy, Tiffany, I said, looking down at my sister. Happiness is seeing my son smile. This is just business. It is just balancing the books. I turned to Frank, who was standing by the door. Frank, please escort the new junior housekeeping associate to the basement. Maria is waiting for her. She has a uniform ready, size medium. You can't be serious, Tiffany gasped. Right now? I am wearing silk. Then you better put on an apron, I said. The shift starts in 10 minutes. And Tiffany? Don't be late. Maria hates tardiness. Frank stepped forward. Miss Tiffany, if you would come with me. Tiffany looked at her parents. They didn't move. They were broken statues. She let out a sob of pure despair and followed Frank out the door. I looked at my father and Victoria. You two can go home, I said. The driver will take you, but the Mercedes stays here. It is company property now. You can take the shuttle bus. Kendall, my father started. Save it for the live stream tomorrow. Dad, I said. You have a script to memorize. I turned my back on them and walked to the window. I heard them shuffle out. I heard the door close. I was alone in the boardroom. I looked down at the city. It looked small from up here. The cars were just specks. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the gift card. The plastic was warm from my hand. I looked at the $1 written on the back. You were wrong, I said to the card. He is priceless. And now, everyone knows it. I put the card back in my pocket. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo's teacher, sending a photo of him painting an art class. He was covered in blue paint, smiling ear to ear. I smiled back at the screen. The war was over. I had won the kingdom. Now, the hard work of rebuilding the ruins would begin, but for the first time in 10 years. The foundation wasn't made of lies. It was made of consequences, and that was a currency that never expired. The grand ballroom of the flagship hotel had hosted presidents, foreign dignitaries, and debutantes for 50 years. Today, it was hosting an execution, not a physical one, but a social and professional dismantling broadcast live in 1080p high definition. I stood behind the tripod, checking the audio levels on the boom mic. The room was stripped of its usual finery. I had ordered the gold tablecloths removed. The crystal centerpieces were gone. There was just a plain wooden table and 2 metal chairs, set against a white backdrop. It looked less like a press conference and more like an interrogation room. Victoria and Tiffany sat in the chairs. Per my instructions, they were wearing no makeup. For women who had spent their entire adult lives lacquered in foundation and contour, this was akin to being naked. Victoria's skin looked gray and patchy under the harsh studio lights. Tiffany's hair, usually blown out to perfection, was pulled back in a severe, messy ponytail. She wore a simple gray sweater I had bought from a discount rack for $12. 2 minutes to air, the camera operator said. He was a freelancer I had hired. A man who didn't care about the sterling name, only that the check cleared. "I can't do this," Victoria whispered, her voice trembling. She looked at the camera lens as if it were the barrel of a gun. "Kendall, please, people will laugh at us." "People are already laughing at you." "Victoria," I said, not looking up from my tablet where I was monitoring the stream feed. "This is your chance to make them stop laughing and start listening. Stick to the script. Do not improvise." "My followers," Tiffany whimpered, staring at the floor. "They are going to drag me." "Your followers are the ones who demanded this," I reminded her. "The viewer count is already at 1.5 million and we haven't even started. You wanted to be famous. Tiffany, congratulations. You are trending worldwide." I looked over at the corner of the room. Leo was sitting on a folding chair, playing with a Rubik's Cube. He was wearing a clean blue shirt and jeans. He looked small in the cavernous room, but he didn't look scared. He looked curious. I had debated bringing him, but he needed to see this. He needed to see the monsters shrink back into human size. 10 seconds, the operator counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, the red light on the camera blinked on. I tapped the screen on my tablet. The comments section exploded immediately. A waterfall of text moving so fast it was a blur. "Justice for Leo. Here for the tea. They look rough, lol. Payback time." Victoria cleared her throat. She picked up the paper I had written for her. Her hands were shaking so violently the paper rattled against the microphone. "Hello?" Victoria began. Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard and started again. "Hello, my name is Victoria Sterling. I am the matriarch of the Sterling family." She paused, looking at me. I nodded sharply. "Keep going." "I am appearing before you today to address the video that has circulated regarding our family's Christmas celebration. I want to admit, without reservation, that my behavior was shameful. I knowingly participated in the bullying of my 7-year-old grandson. Leo, I treated him with cruelty because of his financial status, a status that I mocked despite it being a result of my own family's exclusion of his mother." She took a breath. A tear leaked out of her left eye, tracking through the wrinkles she usually hid. "I gave him a worthless gift card to humiliate him, while showering my other grandchild with excess. It was an act of malice. I am deeply sorry. I have resigned from all charitable boards effective immediately, as I am not fit to judge the worth of others." She put the paper down and covered her face with her hands. The comments were ruthless, crocodile tears. She is only sorry she got caught. But then, it was Tiffany's turn. Tiffany looked into the camera. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked younger than I had ever seen her. Stripped of the bravado and the arrogance, "I am Tiffany Sterling," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "And I am a thief." The comment stream froze for a microsecond, then accelerated. "I embezzled over $150,000 from Sterling Heights Hospitality," Tiffany read, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "I used corporate funds to buy luxury goods for myself and my daughter, to project an image of wealth that I did not earn. I mocked my sister and her son for being poor, while I was stealing money to pretend to be rich." She looked up from the paper. directly into the lens. This part wasn't scripted, but I let it happen. "I called my nephew trash," she said, her voice breaking. "I said he wasn't worth $1. I was wrong. The only thing worth nothing in that room was my integrity. I am sorry. Leo, I am so sorry." She broke down, sobbing openly. It wasn't the pretty crying she did on Instagram. It was ugly, snot-nosed, heaving sobs. "Cut the feed," I ordered. The cameraman killed the stream. The room went silent. Save for Tiffany's weeping, I walked over to the table. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel a surge of joy. I felt a profound sense of exhaustion, like a fever breaking after a long illness. It was done. The lie was exposed. I felt a small hand slip into mine. I looked down. Leo was standing beside me. He was looking at his grandmother and his aunt, who were now just two crying women in a big, empty room. "Mom?" Leo asked softly. "Yes, baby? Do they know I am not trash now?" The question hit me harder than any insult they had ever thrown. It was so innocent, yet it carried the weight of the trauma they had inflicted on him. He hadn't wanted their money. He hadn't wanted their hotels. He had just wanted to know he wasn't garbage. I knelt down and pulled him into a hug, squeezing him so tight I could feel his heartbeat against my chest. "Yes, Leo," I whispered into his hair, my own eyes stinging. "They know. Everyone knows. You are gold. Leo, you have always been gold." I stood up and looked at my father, who was standing in the shadows at the back of the room. He hadn't been on camera, but he had watched the whole thing. He looked shattered. "Take them home, Dad," I said quietly. "Get them out of my sight." He nodded, unable to speak, and shuffled forward to collect his wife and daughter. They left the ballroom like ghosts fading into the woodwork. I walked back to my office. The real work was just starting. I opened my laptop. The stock market had closed for the day, but the after-hours trading on the hospitality index was going wild. I expected the stock to crash. I expected the scandal to tank the valuation, but I was wrong. Sterling Heights, ticker STRH, UP 12% in after-hours trading. I clicked on the analyst reports. Report from Goldman Sachs. While the family scandal is sorted, the market is responding positively to the aggressive transparency of the new CEO, Kendall Brookstone, by exposing the corruption internally and taking decisive action to recover embezzled assets. She has signaled a new era of fiscal responsibility. The Arrogance is gone. Buy rating issued. The world, it seemed, appreciated a clean house more than a polite facade. The next morning, the cleaning began in earnest. I went down to the basement levels at 6:30 in the morning. The air down here smelled of industrial detergent and damp linen. It was a world away from the penthouse offices. Maria, the housekeeping manager, was standing by the time clock with a clipboard. She looked at me and nodded professionally. "Is she here?" I asked. "She just clocked in," Maria said, keeping her face neutral. "Locker 4B. I walked around the corner to the locker room. Tiffany was sitting on a bench, struggling to pull on a pair of orthopedic work shoes. She was wearing the brown and tan uniform of the housekeeping staff. It was 2 sizes too big, bunching at the waist. She had no phone. I had confiscated it at the security desk. She looked up and saw me. "Are you here to gloat?" she spat, though the fire in her eyes was dim. "I am here to inspect the troops," I said. "How do the shoes feel?" "They hurt," she complained. "They are ugly." "They are designed for standing on your feet for 8 hours," I said. "You will appreciate the arch support by noon." Maria walked in. She didn't bow. She didn't flinch. "Sterling," Maria barked. "Grab a cart. You are on the 3rd floor today. Deep clean. That means pulling the furniture out and vacuuming behind the headboards, and I want the baseboards scrubbed by hand." Tiffany hesitated. She looked at me, waiting for me to intervene, to say it was just a joke. I checked my watch. "You are burning daylight. Tiffany, guests check out at 11. Tiffany let out a huff, grabbed the handle of the heavy linen cart, and pushed. It didn't move easily. She had to put her shoulder into it. She grunted, shoving the cart toward the service elevator. As the doors closed on her sullen face, Maria looked at me and smiled. "She is slow," Maria said, "but she scrubbed the toilets in the lobby pretty good. I think she's afraid of germs." "Good," I said. "Keep her afraid." I went back up to the executive suite. My assistant, a new hire, efficient and kind, handed me a message slip. "A Mr. Marcus Thorne called," she said. Or rather, he tried to call. The number he left was disconnected 5 minutes later. Did he leave a message? He said to tell Tiffany that he had to go to Belize for a business opportunity and that he is sorry things didn't work out. I laughed. It was a dark, dry sound. Of course, the rats always jump first. I pulled up the security footage of the employee entrance. I rewound it to 10 minutes ago. I watched Tiffany pushing the cart, struggling with the weight of the sheets. She paused at the service entrance, looking at her phone. No, she didn't have her phone. She reached into her pocket out of habit, realized it was empty, and just stared at the wall for a second. Then, she kept pushing. She was alone. Her boyfriend was gone. Her money was gone. Her followers were mocking her. All she had was the cart and the job. For the first time in her life, she was actually earning her keep. I turned away from the screen. I had a board meeting. The boardroom looked different today. The air was lighter. I had replaced the old, dusty portraits of my ancestors, men who had built the empire on exclusion, with modern art, abstract, colorful, open. The remaining board members were seated. They looked nervous. I had fired 3 of them yesterday for complicity in my father's financial mismanagement. The ones left were the ones who actually knew how to run a hotel. "Good morning," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Good morning, Madam Chairwoman," they chorused. "Let's get straight to business," I said. "The brand Sterling Heights is toxic. It represents arrogance. It represents exclusion. We need a rebrand, a total overhaul of the identity." I pressed a button on the console. The screen behind me lit up. "I am proposing a new name, one that reflects value, integrity, and the future." The words appeared on the screen in bold, clean typography. Leo Associates Hospitality Group. One of the directors cleared his throat. "Leo? After your son?" "Yes," I said. "But also because Leo means lion, it means strength, and associates, because this company is no longer about one family ruling over the rest. It is about the people who work here. From the housekeeping staff to the executives, we are associates. We are partners." "I like it," the director of marketing said, nodding slowly. "It tests well. It feels humble, honest." "It is honest," I said. "We are going to pivot our strategy. No more exclusive, overpriced pretension. We are going to focus on service, real service. We are going to implement a profit-sharing program for all employees. If the company wins, the maid wins. If the maid wins, the guest wins. That will cut into dividends," a shareholder noted. "It will build loyalty," I countered. "And loyalty is a currency that doesn't expire." I looked out the window. The snow had started to fall, covering the grime of the city in a clean, white blanket. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Frank, the security guard. Subject: "Gate incident, Ms. Brookstone. Just thought you should know. A repo truck just left the Sterling mansion. They took the Bentley and the Porsche. Your father handed over the keys. He actually shook the driver's hand." I smiled. My father was learning too. Without the cars, he was just a man. And maybe, just maybe, being just a man would be enough for him to finally be a father. I packed up my files. It was 5 o'clock. I walked out of the building, the new sign already being measured for the lobby wall. I got into my Honda Civic. It still rattled. The heater still smelled like dust. But as I drove toward the school to pick up the heir to the new empire, I felt richer than I ever had in my life. I stopped at a red light. I reached into my purse to get some chapstick. My fingers brushed against the plastic card. I pulled it out. Dollar store, $1. I looked at it one last time, Then, I rolled down the window. The cold wind bit at my face. I held the card out. I let go. The wind caught it, carrying the little piece of yellow plastic away, tumbling it down the street into the gutter where it belonged. I didn't need the reminder anymore. I knew my worth, and more importantly, I had the receipt to prove it. I drove on, the light turning green, merging into the traffic. Just another mother driving home to her son. But this time, the road ahead was wide open. The snow was falling again, just as it had 1 year ago. But this time, as I drove through the iron gates of the Sterling estate, the air did not smell of fear. It smelled of roasted chestnuts, pine needles, and the distinct, smoky aroma of a barbecue truck parked right on the front lawn. It was Christmas Eve, 1 year ago. I had parked my battered Honda Civic down the street, ashamed of the noise it made. Tonight, I parked my sensible, paid-off SUV right next to the front door. Not because I was arrogant, but because there was no valet to judge me. The mansion was glowing. Every window was lit, not with cold, white LEDs designed to look like diamonds, but with warm yellow light. The front doors were wide open. This was not a Sterling family gala. This was the first annual holiday party for Leo Associates. I walked inside, the foyer, which used to be a hushed temple of marble and silence where children were forbidden to touch anything, was chaos. Beautiful, vibrant chaos. There were children running everywhere, the children of housekeepers, the children of line cooks, the children of the valet staff. They were sliding on the marble floors in their socks. They were laughing. I saw Maria, the head of housekeeping, dancing salsa in the middle of the great room with Frank, the head of security. The DJ was not playing classical violin. He was playing Motown. I took a deep breath. The house finally felt like a home. "Mom, look!" Leo ran toward me. He was taller now, 8 years old, his face flushed with excitement. He was holding a half-eaten cookie in one hand and a toy airplane in the other. "They have a chocolate fountain, Mom, a real one." "I see that," I smiled, wiping a smudge of chocolate from his cheek. "Just don't get it on the drapes, okay? Actually, never mind. Get it on the drapes. We own them." "Kendall." I turned. Standing near the fireplace was my father, Arthur. He looked different. The year had aged him, etching deeper lines into his face and thinning his hair. But he looked healthier. The gray pallor of stress was gone. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing a thick wool cardigan and corduroy pants. He looked like a grandfather, not a failing tycoon. He was holding a small glass of cider. He looked at the room, at the employees eating and drinking on his furniture. And then he looked at me. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a quiet sort of wonder. "It is loud," he said. "It is alive," I corrected. "Yes," he nodded slowly. "It is alive." He set his glass down on the mantel and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, rectangular box wrapped in simple brown paper. "Where is the boy?" he asked. "Leo is over there," I pointed. "Terrorizing the chocolate fountain." My father walked over to Leo. I followed, staying close enough to intervene if the old Arthur resurfaced, but far enough away to let them have their moment. "Leo," my father said. Kneeling down, his knees popped audibly. Leo stopped chewing. He looked at his grandfather with a mixture of caution and curiosity. "Hi, Grandpa." "Merry Christmas, son," my father said. His voice was thick with emotion. "I didn't get you a gift card this year." Leo giggled. "That is okay. Mom said gift cards are boring anyway." "She is right," my father said. "She is usually right." He handed Leo the box. "Open it." Leo tore the paper. He opened the velvet box. Inside sat a gold pocket watch. It was old. The metal was soft from decades of handling, and the face was slightly yellowed with age. It wasn't flashy. It didn't have diamonds. But I recognized it immediately. It was my grandfather's watch, the watch my father had sworn never to let out of the family vault. "Is it a clock?" Leo asked, tilting his head. "It is a watch," my father explained. "It belonged to my father. and his father before him, it doesn't tell you how much time you have left. Leo, it tells you what time it is right now. It reminds you that now is the only time that matters. My father looked up at me, his eyes watering. I spent my whole life worrying about the future, he whispered. I worried about the legacy. I worried about the stock price. I missed the now. I missed your mother growing up. I missed you. He looked back at Leo. I can't buy you Disney World. Leo, I don't have that kind of money anymore, but I can give you my time, if you want it. Leo looked at the watch, then at his grandfather. He smiled, a genuine, gap-toothed smile. Can you show me how to wind it? Leo asked. I would love to, my father said. A tear slipped down his cheek, but he didn't wipe it away. He just showed Leo the tiny dial. I felt a lump in my throat. I stepped away, giving them space. My father had lost his fortune, but for the first time in his life, he was building something of value. I walked through the crowd, shaking hands with the staff. They called me Kendall, not Ms. Brookstone. They told me about their families, their holiday plans. They thanked me for the Christmas bonuses that were calculated based on a percentage of the profits, meaning everyone in the room had checks for $2,000 in their pockets. I made my way to the French doors and stepped out onto the balcony. The cold air bit at my cheeks, refreshing and sharp. I looked down into the garden below. It was tented and heated, serving as the overflow area for the food service. That was where the servers were stationed. I saw them immediately. Victoria was standing behind a carving station, wearing a white chef's coat and a black apron. She was slicing ham. Her hair was pulled back in a hairnet. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't scowling either. She was focused. She was working. And next to her, carrying a heavy tray of dirty glasses, was Tiffany. My sister looked tired. Her feet were clad in the sensible orthopedic shoes I had forced her to buy. She wasn't wearing makeup. She looked 10 years older than she had last Christmas, and yet, she looked more human. As I watched, Tiffany set the tray down on a busing station. She rubbed her lower back. Then, she looked over to the side of the tent. Bella was there. The princess was sitting on a plastic crate, wearing a red sweater from Target and a pair of jeans. She was holding a paper plate with a hot dog on it. Sitting next to her, sharing the crate, was the daughter of the sous chef. They were both laughing, their heads thrown back, playing some hand-clapping game. Bella didn't have a Gucci bag. She didn't have a phone in her hand. She had mustard on her chin and a friend. Tiffany watched her daughter for a moment. I saw a flicker of something on Tiffany's face. It wasn't anger. It wasn't resentment. It was relief. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that her daughter didn't need a pony to be happy. She just needed to be a child. I reached into the inner pocket of my blazer. My fingers closed around a small, hard rectangle. In the story of my life. I had told myself I threw the gift card away. I had watched it tumble down the street in the wind. But the truth is, 10 minutes later, I had stopped the car. I had walked back into the freezing slush and found it. Because you do not throw away the thing that woke you up. You do not throw away the catalyst. I had taken it to a custom framer. It was now encased in a heavy block of lucite, floating in the center, preserved like a prehistoric mosquito in amber. I walked down the stairs to the garden level. The staff parted for me, nodding respectfully. I walked straight to the busing station. Tiffany saw me coming. She stiffened. She wiped her hands on her apron, her defensive walls instantly going up. I am on my break, she said defensively. Maria said I could take 10 minutes. I am not here to check your time card. Tiffany, I said. Then what do you want? She asked. To make fun of the uniform? Go ahead. Get it over with. The uniform suits you, I said honestly. You look like someone who contributes. Tiffany blinked, confused by the lack of sarcasm. My back kills, she muttered, and I broke a nail. That is the price of labor, I said. But the ham is excellent. Victoria did a good job. Don't tell her that. Tiffany rolled her eyes. She will demand a Michelin star. I smiled. It was a small moment, but it was a real conversation. We weren't sisters yet. We might never be. But we were no longer enemies. We were coworkers. "I have something for you," I said. I held out the lucite block. Tiffany looked at it. Her eyes widened as she recognized the yellow plastic card suspended inside. "Dollar store, $1." "You kept it," she whispered. "Why? To torture me?" "No," I said. "To remind you." I placed the heavy block in her hands. She had to use both hands to hold it. "Remind me of what? That I was a monster?" "To remind you that value is subjective," I said. "You thought this card was an insult because it had a low number on it. But this card gave me the anger I needed to save this company. It gave me the fire to save Leo. And in a way, it saved you too." Tiffany looked down at the card, then over at Bella, who was still laughing with the sous chef's daughter. "I hated you for months," Tiffany said quietly. "Scrubbing those toilets, I plotted your murder 1,000 times." "I know," I said. "But," she hesitated, "Bella is happier. She sleeps better. She doesn't scream at me anymore. She actually eats hot dogs." "She is free, Tiffany," I said. "And so are you. Marcus is gone. The fake friends are gone. The debt is gone. All that is left is what is real." I reached out and tapped the glass surface of the block. "Keep this," I said. "Consider it a tip. Put it on your dresser. Look at it whenever you feel like buying a purse you can't afford. Look at it whenever you think you are better than the person cleaning the floor next to you." Tiffany looked at me. Her eyes were wet. "Don't spend it all at once, princess," I said softly, for the first time in her life. Tiffany didn't argue. She nodded. She clutched the block to her chest as if it were a diamond. "Thank you," she whispered. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see her reaction. The ledger was closed. The balance was 0. I walked back up the stairs, the cold wind swirling around me. I felt light. I felt untethered. I found Leo near the door. He was wearing his coat, ready to go. He had the gold watch clutched tightly in his hand. "Ready to go, Mom?" he asked. "Ready," I said. We walked out to the car. The snow was falling harder now, covering the world in white. As I buckled him into his booster seat, he looked at the mansion one last time. It was a beacon of light in the darkness. "Mom?" Leo asked. "Yeah, Bud?" "Grandpa said he doesn't have money anymore, and Aunt Tiffany is working in the kitchen." "That is right," I said, getting into the driver's seat. "But we own the building?" "We do." "And we have the chocolate fountain?" "We do." Leo paused, thinking hard, his brow furrowed. "Mom, are we rich?" I looked at him in the rearview mirror. I looked at the boy who had been offered $1 and had turned it into an empire. I looked at the watch in his hand, a symbol of time reclaimed. I thought about my father sitting by the fire, finally at peace. I thought about Tiffany earning her self-respect one dirty plate at a time. I started the engine. The heater kicked on, warm and strong. "Yes, Leo," I said, smiling as I pulled out of the driveway, leaving the iron gates wide open behind us. "We are rich, not because of the building, and not because of the bank account." "Why then?" he asked. "Because we are free, son," I said. "We are rich because we know exactly who we are, and no one, not ever again, can put a price tag on us for $1. I drove into the night, the road stretching out before us, endless and bright. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It has been a journey of revenge, redemption, and the true meaning of value. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from the busy streets of New York, the quiet countryside of England, or somewhere else entirely? Please leave a comment below and share your thoughts on Kendall's revenge. Did the family get what they deserved? If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Sunday Drama Stories channel. Hit that like button to support our work. And don't forget to press the hype button so this story can reach even more people. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next story.